I'm Rachel Poli with Ari Meghlen, and we're your host for the Merry Writer podcast. We are on episode 56, and this week's question is, when and how did you begin writing? Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening so you never miss a show. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like. So today is actually World Creativity and Innovation Day, so we thought it would be a cool idea to discuss our own writing on the podcast. Ari, I'm going to ask you, when and how did you begin writing?
I'm just going to nip in and also say it's also World Stationery Day. So for all those writers who are thinking about whether they should buy another notebook, you should. This is the day. You're allowed to. You know, I'm definitely going to go buy some colored pens.
More notebooks, the more the merrier.
Exactly. Okay, getting back to the actual question on the podcast. I did begin writing when I was very young. I think it was about 8, and it was during a creative writing class it was during a creative writing exercise in primary school. So about 8 years old. Yeah, I think that's right. It's where I fell in love with the idea of telling stories. I already had a kind of passion for listening to stories, and we used to have this really old collection of magazines and matching cassette tapes, showing my age again, where the narrator would read through the stories, but you had the magazine in front of you and you could obviously follow along. And we used to listen to those during really long car rides, you know, whenever our parents were like, hey, we're going somewhere really boring. It's like, always brought those tapes along. And it's really funny because I found them recently. They're in my parents' shed, and I'm having them arranged to come back over here because I'd love to see them again. And if I do, I will definitely try and get some photos because they're like so old, because so am I.
I love how nonchalant that was.
Just gotta accept it now, past that age bracket. I just don't care anymore. So to me, most children learn stories during play. You know, you get toys when you're little, and even when you're like really little, when you're like a toddler, and you give them names and you make them walk and you make them talk, and they go on adventures across the sofa and things like that. This is sounding way better in my head. I don't think it's as good. And all that play is really a way for building up stories. And I was really big into that when I was little. So moving from stories with my toys to writing down those stories so that I had them all the time was quite an easy leap. And I say easy in the sense that I really enjoyed the idea of writing stories. Not easy in the sense that I was not actually very good at writing and reading. When I was little, I struggled. I actually was behind in the class for a very long time throughout most of my primary school years and into high school. It's a shock that I actually am a writer because I struggled so badly to spell and to form sentence structures, and I was a very slow reader, and I'm talking like really slow, and I would mix my words up, but I didn't have dyslexia, so I was just bad at reading. That's what it was.
Hey, look at you persevered.
Oh, I did. It's like, looking back, it's really freaky of how bad I was compared to what I am now. I always remember in school, we had these set of books in primary school, and you had to read through them, and they all had coloured stickers. So the first one was pink, then red, orange, yellow, light green, dark green, all the way up. And then the top ones were silver and gold. And that was like, it was supposed to be, as you read through them throughout your ages, it showed the sort of like age level you were at. You know, as you've got older, your reading ability was supposed to increase and get better. And most people, when they got to the end of primary school, would be in the silver and gold. I think I was at yellow. So I really struggled. And then seeing how I am now, it is like, wow, what did I do to just flip over and suddenly be a lot better? I don't know what it was, but maybe it was writing. Who knows? Anyway, I digress. So since when I was playing with toys, they were mostly animals. I wasn't really big onto dolls. Not a Barbie fan or a baby in a pram rubbish. I like the little zoo animals and the little plastic animals. That was my thing. So kind of wasn't a big surprise that my love of books came along. Sorry. Kind of wasn't really a surprise that I particularly love animal stories such as Winnie the Pooh, Animals of Farthing Wood, Redwall, and obviously as I got a lot older, things like Plague Dogs, which is really depressing, and Watership Down, which obviously all feature animals. So that was the sort of thing I started to write when I wrote. A lot of my earlier stories were very animal focused. And then in my first year of high school was probably when I started to write more. In my first year of high school, that's when I probably started to write with a bit more intensity, and all the other stories I'd written were done in longhand in a pad. So obviously I got to the end of the pad and it's like I had to add another one, and it was very messy and you couldn't really edit very well, and it was slow. So then I moved to a typewriter and used up a lot of ink, spent a lot of money on ink. But I still never exceeded more than 100 pages in stories. So it wasn't until I got like middle of high school and then I got a computer, and then boom, I was able to do proper long stories, full chapters, well, mostly scenes, let's be honest. Sometimes they end up in chapters, but mostly scenes. And that's when I started writing into the hundreds of thousands of words for a story, and loads more pages. And yeah, it kind of really took off from there, and I just haven't stopped since.
All right, so for those of you guys who don't know, Ari and I, we have been talking to each other for a few years. We met through our blogs, and then long story short, here we are. But we've never actually discussed how we started writing before, so this is all new to me. And it really does amaze me. The more we talk, the more I realize how alike we are. Because you mentioned that you used to listen to stories and you would have cassette tapes for the car ride and stuff. I used to go to the library with my sister, and we would get cassette audiobooks, and we would listen to them on our cassette player while we fell asleep. And we would be lying in bed, and when it was time to flip the cassette tape over, that's when we knew, okay, it's time to go to sleep. And then the next night we would listen to the other side. And those cassette tapes were always Hank the Cowdog. I don't know if you know those books.
No, never heard of that, but it sounds awesome.
Hank the Cowdog is a dog, and he was a detective. And it was a comedic mystery story for kids. It was delightful. I actually still have the books. And like you, I was never big on dolls either. I had the American Girl dolls. I actually had a bunch of them. And I did have Barbies, but they were always the bad guys. I had Ninja Turtle action figures and stuff, and like the little Pokemon action figures. And we used to my sister and I would make the Barbies the bad guys. And because Peter Pan is my favorite, Jasmine is her favorite. So we had little action figures, and we would play Peter Pan and Jasmine. And we used the Bitty Baby diaper bag as a shop. So our like stuffed animals, she has Snoopy, I have a giraffe, and they opened up their own lemonade stand and menus and everything. But you say like most children learn stories during play. We're all using our imagination, and even though we're not actually writing down the stories, that's what we're doing. We're building our own little world. We're building our own characters and stories, and it's just all imagination. And it's like those memories that you have playing with your toys when you were a kid, and the same with me, like we're always going to have those. Will they ever be written down? No, they will not. But we will always have those memories. And that right there is just having that strong imagination. That's where you get your whole start.
Definitely.
It's cool.
Yeah.
I can't comment on the typewriter.
Yeah, I think my parents got me a computer literally because I used to type, and because it was, the keys were so hard, and sometimes they would be very faint when they hit, so you had to really clank it. So when I learned to type on the typewriter, it was like clack, 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 clack. And I would sit in the common room, in like the living room area where other people were, and they hated it because you couldn't watch TV with clack, 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 in the back, and I'm really loud. And because I could type fast, even on a typewriter, it was just constant. And so then it was like, yeah, let's get a computer and put it in a room.
One of these days, I'm going to try to find a typewriter and actually just give it a shot, because I would love to have a typewriter.
Yes.
See, get the feel of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, back in the day, we had a family computer, and we had a desktop that was in the basement, and my sister and I, we wouldn't fight over it, but we would kind of fight over it because obviously that was the only computer in the house, and we both enjoyed writing, and there were always those like little computer games that we would play and stuff like that. And then our mom would be talking on the phone, so we couldn't do anything on the computer because of the internet.
Oh yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a follow-up question. The novels that you're working on now, like where did those come from? Like how long have you been writing before you came up with the ideas that you're working on now?
Well, The Blessed is the one I'm working on currently. And that's been in the works. I think that was a spark about 5 years ago, but I only started really trying to get into it about 2 years ago. And it's a trilogy, and obviously I've written a lot for all 3 books, so kind of, but the first things I ever wrote were 2 full-length sci-fi novels after my, obviously, writing in a part about animals. And then I wrote 3 police procedural crime novels.
Oh.
And then I started fantasy. So it wasn't like I started fantasy. I started with I love sci-fi. So I started with sci-fi, and then book 1, I had two books of a trilogy. Sorry, manuscripts, 2 manuscripts of a trilogy sorted, and then book 1 corrupted, and I lost it.
Oh.
And then half of book 2 corrupted, but an IT teacher of mine managed to salvage it for me. And then, yeah, so I left that and went to a different sci-fi. And then I don't know, I think I get caught on things if I'm watching something, or if like something comes out, like it might have been that I was watching NYPD Blue and suddenly really want to write police procedural stories and mysteries. And then, I'll have watched Willow, and that will have brought me onto fantasy. It's usually a movie that kind of triggers something, and I'm like, and then I went on to fantasy. So I have been, let's see, Dark Heart series started when I was 18. That was a long time ago. As I said, it's about 8 to 10 books long, and I have written so much of it. It's just not in order or in segments for books, but there's a lot of stuff there. So yeah, I have been writing for a lot, but I was writing throughout most of my teenage years, and I wrote full stories back then. So I've probably written about 8 to 10 books before I got to the one I'm working on now. So I just didn't do anything with them.
No, I'm the same exact way. I have quite a few complete manuscripts, but none of them will ever see the light of day.
No. Or it's one of those where if you ever got time, it's so funny. You go back and look at it, and then with that more mature writer in you that's got enough experience behind you now to go, but that's potential, and then tear it apart and write it with the stronger writer you are now. I'd love to do that, but I haven't got time. I've got enough stories now to deal with without looking back at the ones that were okay.
I know.
When I retire.
Were they just okay though?
There are parts where I'm like, wow, that was good. Even now, because when I packed up, I had one called Dare. It was book 1 in the Belmara series, which has not been fully stopped. It's still in there. And I remember I did flick through it before I packed it away and archived it. And I was like, wow, that was a good scene. Oh yeah, that was a good scene. And then there's some others where it's like, wow, that dialogue sucks. Jeez. I don't even like that main character. But yeah, so that's why we don't throw things, because you just don't know. Might get to retirement age and decide that is my project. I'm going to pull it out and rewrite it.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's so funny to keep everything that you've written long ago in the past, because you can really see how you grow as a writer. And there are certain scenes and dialogues and stuff that you look at and you're like, wow, this is actually pretty good, whether you still feel that way now or whether you look back on it and say, that was a really good line for me to write at the time in my whole writing stage.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense, but whatever. We're still in that writing stage. I'm going with it. It's already out there.
It's like that, those art challenges you see where you get someone who'll put a picture up of like, a picture they drew in 2000 and then a picture they drew in 2010, the same image, and it's like, wow.
Yeah.
So maybe writers should do that. We should take a really old shitty thing we wrote 10 years ago and then rewrite it with the 10-year difference of experience and put them both up and like, this was the original, this is what I did, and see what people think. It could be that people prefer the old one. That would be embarrassing.
You never know. That's actually a really cool idea to do that. I actually did something similar to that. I don't know, like a year or two ago on my blog. I took the first chapter of the very first thing that I wrote and I put it up on my blog and I made comments and notes on it. And I was more or less roasting myself. That was a lot of fun though. I enjoyed that.
Love that, roasting yourself.
Yeah. Because I wrote it when I was 10. So it's awful.
You're roasting your 10-year-old self. That's so mean. Oh my gosh.
No, because it was just so poorly written, and I posted that on a website. Yeah, but I posted it on a website, and so many people were like, "This is amazing." And looking back on it now, I'm like, "No, who thought of that?"
Oh, they were just being nice. They were your super fans from way back when.
I know, from way back then.
Let's talk about how you started. Let's hear your embarrassing stories.
Oh yeah, my embarrassing stories. I just told you one. Well, actually, that's going to lead me into this because, as you said earlier, it's also World Stationery Day. So speaking of stationery, that's actually how I started off writing my books. I was 10 years old and I wrote entire novels in a one-subject notebook. And chapters were only a page long. They were sometimes less, half a page, 2 sentences. And I drew pictures to go along with it. And of course, it was all Ninja Turtles fan fiction, which is actually the first chapter. That's the story of the first chapter that I posted on my blog and roasted myself for. My sister found a website called fanfiction.net and she began writing on there. And of course, I wanted to copy her and she let me write a Ninja Turtle story on her account since I wasn't technically old enough to have my own account on there. And the story still exists. It's 100 chapters long and it's over 86,000 words. And I had a total of 58 stories posted on that site. And it amazes me that I wrote so much when I can barely be bothered to write my own original work now. And no, I am not saying my username. I am not going to let you guys go on fanfiction.net and look me up. But if you want to look at what I wrote, go find it on my blog. And you can make fun of me alongside me. But a few years later, I found their sister site, Fiction Press, which was essentially the same thing, but it was all original work. And I tried to write some original work on there, but I had way more fun with fan fiction. So I kind of stuck with the fan fiction, and I don't really know why I didn't care too much for original work, which is so bizarre now. But anyway, in 2008, my sister discovered NaNoWriMo. I made an account on there about a week into the month of November, so I didn't do anything on there because the perfectionism in me was like, there's no way I'm going to win this challenge because I didn't get to start on day 1, blah, 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 blah. So I explored the website and the forums and got a feel for what NaNoWriMo is and what the challenge is like. Between the end of 2008 and during 2009, I wrote my first official original novel. It was called Diary of a Lover, and no, I'm not going to explain what it was about. I still have it. The manuscript is completed. It's under my bed, and that's where it's going to stay. But I wanted to take NaNoWriMo, and I wanted to see if I would actually be able to write 50,000 words in a month. So during that in-between year, that's why I wrote Diary of a Lover, because I wanted to see if I could actually write a full novel. So then in 2009, when NaNoWriMo happened in November, I officially participated in it, and I wrote 50,000 words of a novel. I don't think I finished it, but it was called The Others. And unfortunately, that got corrupted, and I lost it forever. Which is probably fine, because it probably wasn't good anyway, but I'm lucky I remember what the title was.
Oh.
And then from there, I've always written ever since then. I have participated in NaNoWriMo every year since. And like you, I have a ton of manuscripts that I've written and completed, but they're not edited. And finally, in 2011, my sister and I went to Barnes & Noble to have a writing session, and I had no clue what to write about. So I decided to write a mystery. And the first line I wrote was, "It was a dark, blustery night. It was raining, and I was wet." And I thought that was the most brilliant line ever. And I was cracking myself up over it. And that was George. 10 years later, he's still being a pain in my ass, but total different personality now.
Oh, I kind of like that. I like how we met, how George was born. That's so nice.
It's just a random first line, because I was thinking like Pink Panther.
Yes.
Which he is not like that anymore. But in the beginning, that's how he was. He was a dope.
Yeah. That's good though. It's like it's awesome seeing as a writer how you've sort of moved along, but how the character, because we write these characters for so long, especially me and you, how they change in the years, because we change. So our experiences as we get older, we get saltier and crabbier. We can put more of that into these characters, get rid of all that carefree happy spirit they have, and, no, gone. They can now be gritty and angry.
And that's exactly how George is. He's salty about everything.
That's why it's like, if you want to write a happy novel, do it when you're younger and you have a little bit more hope and faith with yourself and everything. And as the older you get, it's just salty, constant.
Yeah. Yep.
Salt and vinegar. That's what it is. Really, really hungry for chips now.
Yeah.
So Diary of a Lover is not gonna be released anytime. We can't pick
God,
it.
no. No. I don't even, I'll have to pull it out and show you at some point. I can't even remember how long it is.
Can I ask a question?
Depends.
Is Diary of a Lover something that if it had been published, that you would be happy with your parents reading? Or is it something not?
Oh yeah, no, it's not like that.
just checking.
No, it's written as diary entries, and I think the main character, she was like obsessed with like this person in her class. I think that's if I remember correctly, that's what it was about.
I do like those ones, the diary entries. I know they were big at one point, weren't they? But I remember when I was younger, there was a book called, this is where I try to remember. I have no idea who wrote it. And it was called Letters from a Lovelorn Teenager. And I used to read it when I was younger. And it wasn't a diary, actually. It was letters. So the main character was a teenage girl, and she would write letters to a magazine, Agony Aunt. And then obviously you wouldn't see the reply. You wouldn't be like her letter and then the Agony Aunt's letter. But obviously she would respond in her next letter to the Agony Aunt's like suggestions.
Oh, interesting.
And it's actually I still have a copy. And every now and then it's one of those books where I'll just pull it out. And if I don't need a book I need to think heavily with, I just like something I've read before, something really light, and I will read it again. And because she had a crush on some guy at school who was like, she called him the Vision because he was really attractive. And it was how she was trying to deal with this. And she had an older sister who was a bit of a nemesis. And it was just really, really funny. And I actually liked that style, because I know there was Bridget Jones's Diary. You've got the Diary of Adrian Mole. So there's quite a few like that. And I don't know, I think they should come back. I think there should be more diary/letter books out there coming out. So if you've got one, if you write one, do let us know, because I would love to read another one of those. Yeah,
I mean, honestly, I actually had a whole series of these planned out.
You should try that again.
I can't remember what some of them were, but I do remember one of them was Diary of a Killer.
That would work.
Yeah. I mean, hey, who knows? Maybe at some point I will end up writing it. Because clearly I love death and destruction. So
I have to make a comment on something you said in your answer. So you had a story and it's still on fanfiction.net. 100 chapters? Yep. 100 chapters in 86,000 words.
Yep.
Ow. Ow. That hurt me in my soul when you said that. Please tell me you don't still do that. 100 chapters.
Oh God, no. No, so the thing is, the reason why it was so long was because it was really popular. So I just kept going with it.
Yeah.
And of course, little 10-year-old me, I was like, hey, people like it. People like me. Yay. So I rolled with it.
Oh, no, I like that. Not the 100 chapters that scares the crap out of me.
I mean, well, to be fair, it is only 86,000 words.
True.
Which that's like a regular novel.
That's a normal novel. I think it's just the idea of in small little chapters. It's just it's giving me anxiety.
Well, you know, but also that was the thing back then. That's how you got people to come back. That's how you kept the story's longevity. Because people would always be expecting a new chapter, and then like once the story was over, then it's like, well, I want to keep them coming back in some way.
Yeah. I still think we should put a link to the story, the chapter that you have on your website that you roasted yourself. I think we should put that in the description below.
If I can find it, I will do my best to try to find it. And actually, to be honest, I think on my blog, I think I did link to my fan fiction profile. So maybe people will end up finding it regardless.
Could have a whole set of new fans though, you know, people loving the original stories. Because the thing is, there are people who do that, aren't there? There are authors who then publish like old stories from when they were younger, and people like it because there's almost like a genuineness, not a word.
Well, it is now, but
yeah, like they're getting to see a bit more about the author, and you know, remember people, it's not just a story. We, the author, are part of the brand, and for some weird reason, readers actually like to know more about the authors. Still weird, but yep. So we have to think about that. So yeah, even though it might be a bit of a weird story, or as you said, from a 10-year-old where there's probably errors and run-on sentences and just the worst dialogue, you'll still get people getting really excited for it.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
I feel so sorry that you lost your story, the others. It's the fact that we've both had stories that got corrupted, and it hits you so deep. And I don't know if it's the same with you, but as soon as I lose a story, even if I have a lot of it in my head, I just go, yeah, I'm not rewriting that.
Oh yeah, no. Sometimes it's just too much. I mean, if I lost George, for example, then yes, I would totally rewrite that. I've already rewritten it 600 times. So what's one more? But it's still so heartbreaking because I didn't just lose that story. I lost quite a few other manuscripts because my flash drive broke. Actually, no, it wasn't even the flash drive. It was the USB port of my laptop, and that was broken, and I didn't realize it. So it kind of corrupted the flash drive, and then I thought it was just the flash drive, but then I tried plugging something else in to the USB port and nothing worked. And it dawned on me that my USB port was frying everything.
No, honestly, I've written tweets and I've lost them, and I've been like, I'm not writing that again. So I've got no chance.
Yeah, I know.
Sending a text that's like 5 lines long, and it's like, oh, it's gone. Yeah. Then I'll just put thanks, hi,
yeah, whatever. You're getting a one-word answer. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've got no chance of rewriting a novel if we lose it. That's why we're very big on protecting our work now.
But this is why we always tell you guys to back up your stuff. Actually, I shouldn't say we always tell you. We haven't actually said that in a really long time. But back up your stuff. This is your friendly reminder. Save it to a flash drive. Email it to yourself. Save it to Dropbox, Google Drive. Do all that fun stuff.
Yep. Just because you can never have enough backups, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Just seriously.
Right. And then you have to keep them all uniform with each other.
That's where I fall down.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. But at least you have something.
Exactly.
All right. Well, on that note, I think that's it. That's my story. That's Ari's story. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I hope it kind of intrigued you a little bit. And we hope you just enjoyed this episode in general. So do let us know when and how you began writing in the comments or on Twitter using the hashtag The Merry Writer Podcast. And if you want to get some extra content, head on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/The Merry Writer Podcast. You can support our show, and for as little as $1 a month, you can get extra bonus content. And tune in next week for another episode of the Merry Writer Podcast, where we ask all the right questions. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.
This podcast is brought to you by Excessive Caffeine. We drink a lot. The music titled Inspired is by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons 4.0.